Starting from the age of 19, I dated rich married women for money. Ask any questions. I was tormented by doubts for 2 weeks whether to create this rub or not. At last I made up my mind. These are not show-offs and not a reason to get attention. It's something I've kept a secret for over 20 years. And my family still doesn't know anything. I think. Now I post such information about myself as a form of therapy. It all started in 2003 when I was 19, and I worked at the Everglades Club in Florida. I parked golf carts, brought drinks, helped with events. Altogether, I did it little by little. If you are careful in such places, you can see a lot. After about 6 months of work, I met one of the visitors of the club there. She was under 50, a dazzling blonde, always flawless looking. She was married to a man who almost never was nearby. We hung out a lot, laughed. Conversations gradually became more and more personal and eventually grew into something more. Once we met outside the Paris Poly Club, and she gave me $4,000 cash. For a 20-year-old guy in 2003, it was money that I had never held in my hands before, and even I didn't see it. She persuaded me to leave my job at the club, and for the next 2 years we spent a lot of time together. Through her entourage, I met other women at charity evenings, private receptions, weekends in the country. They took. Without further explanation, they bought me gifts in full, covered the expenses. Gradually, all this grew into a chain of secret paid connections. Over the years, I have had relationships with the wives of billionaires and multimillionaires, heads of major companies and well-known people in their fields. Almost every one of them cheated, and often husbands knew about it and did not object. For many marriages, it was more a matter of image and convenience than real romance. Quite early on, I became interested in female psychology and the very nature of intimacy. Studied body language, timings, behavioral patterns to understand why women who seem to have everything continue to look for something else. Today, I no longer depend on this side of my life financially, but I have never completely left it. First, the money I earned became the startup capital for me to invest, which provides me now. For a little more than 20 years, I have visited 31 countries, stayed in luxurious suites, visited yachts whose cost exceeds the price of entire districts. I've seen fleeting romances turn out to be more durable than marriages themselves. I think that's enough. History. Ask anything. In all these years, have you ever been caught by the husbands of these ladies? Were you worried about yours? Security? In a little more than 20 years, I can remember only 5 women who were truly burned. Of these, only 2 divorced. The rest remained married. And surprisingly, little has changed in their lives. Reality. It is such that, in these circles, marriage is most often about money, status, and social status, and not about love or exclusivity. Many people from the outside do not understand this dynamic. If a woman is still caught, the husband's reaction. Usually there are 2 types. Either he initially tacitly accepts what happened, or at first he gets angry, but then he resigns himself anyway. Reason. Simple. Divorce for these men is financially destructive. If she is with him long enough, she can take half or even more than his fortune, plus count on lifetime payments. Many of them prefer to swallow their pride than to lose hundreds of millions. I also had such cases when my husband not only knew, but was also directly involved in it. Business. Countless times I was with the woman while her husband watched the process. Sometimes it's a matter of control, sometimes just a voyeurism, and sometimes a general fetish that they have kept secret for years. This is not so common. Rarely, especially among very wealthy couples who are used to getting whatever they want. As for my safety, I have never had cases when my husband attacked me with aggression. But there were times when I had to quickly dump if someone returned home ahead of time. You quickly realize that you only need to act in fully controlled circumstances and rely on the caution of the women themselves. Basically, they are the ones who make sure that everything remained a secret. Did women tell you in advance that they were married? And has it ever happened that you were chosen by a couple jointly? Yes, some said it right away and some mentioned it only later. There were also situations when it was becoming quite clear that I had been chosen by a joint decision. Usually this happened after the holiday, evening or some event. Such cases seemed more planned, but sometimes it happened spontaneously. A what? Did you notice when you were around people from high society? For them, people are expendable or they are really looking for sincere connection? According to my observations, both are both. For the top, people can be considered expendable if they do not bring any benefit or value. But that doesn't mean they don't crave connection. The problem is that their understanding of the connection is different from ordinary people. Most often, it is transactional, even if it's not about money. It can be the status of influence, access to something or someone, or just the excitement of communicating with someone outside their usual circle. For many, true emotional intimacy is rare. They are used to the fact that everyone has. I have my own interest. So when you find someone to relax with without fear of judgment or ulterior motives, it feels especially strongly. That's why some women have been dating me for years. I'm not from the circle, I don't compete with their lifestyle, and I do not reveal their secrets. In their world, trust is more valuable than money. Brother, help me join this industry. This is not the one. An area where you can submit a resume or apply for a vacancy. Everything here is almost entirely tied to appearance. And, like it or not, a lot depends on race and body type. In practice, these women have very specific tastes, and a huge number of them gravitate towards black men. It's just a fact from my experience, and I'm lucky to have black. As for the rest, it's just a matter of small things. It remains only to find yourself in the right places, where there are wealthy people. Women, charity evenings, luxury hotels, private clubs, art exhibitions. You can't do it here. Force things and you can't look like you're trying too hard. Such women are always somewhere nearby. Have to. Just approach and try. I wonder how your family still hasn't suspected anything? How do you explain? All trips? Are you still in touch with that first woman? My family never asked much questions. I say that I deal with real estate and finance. If it's about a week in Europe, they think it's for work. I have not communicated with that first woman since 2009. By the way, the first woman. How did it happen that first you drove a golf cart and then bam and then with her in bed? Who started flirting? Whose idea was it? How long did it take from the first meeting to the Parepahan? With her, it all started gradually. Light conversations, playful comments, prolonged eye contact. She was the one who took the next step. From our first meeting, it must have been a couple of weeks before bed. In one of your answers, you wrote that you once received 170,000 in 4 days. What? This is? Like, how is it generally perceived? Probably you have a certain sense of pride, but at the same time it seems absurd. In the beginning, of course, it is. It seemed to me some kind of surrealism. I have only seen such amounts in films, and here they come to me in a few days. Count. At first, it causes pride but more shock. Very quickly realizing that in certain circles money is flowing into, on a completely different scale. For them, this is not an insane expense, but a trifle against the background of their fortune. I don't really think about in the categories of morality because in their world this is the norm. These people live in a completely different economic reality. They can spend the same amount on a bottle of wine or a watch without even blinking. For them, everything comes down not to need or excess but to what they want here and now, and to the possibility of this. Yet, you just become part of their desires. How much have you earned in total over the years? You yourself led women to, or were they the initiators? How does such a conversation even begin? Over the years, I have earned a little more. A 7-figure sum from women, but much more from business projects that I am engaged in at the same time. In the beginning, I didn't need to convince anyone at all. Most often, it was they who took the initiative themselves. Now everything is built on word of mouth. I have a limited circle of clients, and I agree to new meetings only if the offer is really large and justifies time spent. Wait, the first one gave you 4K, the maximum was 170K for the weekend, and in 20 years you barely scraped together a little more. Million. Most 40-year-olds with read it since 2003 have long made seven-figure sums. You're watching. By two specific numbers and you perceive them as an indicator of my entire career, although this is not true. These were exceptional situations, rare peaks but unusual prices. In fact, most of the agreements were built differently. Somewhere, there were long-term relationships with smaller but stable payments. Somewhere it's not about money at all. And many, I myself rejected the proposals because they did not correspond to what I wanted. My life and my decisions were not about chasing every possible dollar. Yes, the money was good, but it never happened. The only reason to stay in this area. There are many details and context that I have deliberately omitted for the sake of confidentiality, and without them, it is easy to draw conclusions that do not reflect how things really happened. How long and thickness do you have your instrument? The total length is 23.5 centimeters. The width is about 3.8 centimeters. In your life now, one of the main things I realized is that women are much more concerned than many men are used to. Think. Their desire for intimacy is much stronger than is commonly believed. And for many, it's not just physical, a need, but also a way to feel alive, desirable and strong. Men often think that a woman easily does without a cupcake or strive for it only for the sake of romance. But this is far from truth. Under the right conditions, they can easily match or even surpass men in this endeavor. An important observation is that money changes the rules. It's not just about purchases, it's about the power and access they give. Money opens doors that most people don't even notice. And when you understand how quickly they are capable to change the balance of power, it is no longer possible to look at them in the same way as before. In this world, it is the owners of resources set the rhythm for everyone else. And no matter how ideal wealth and influence may look from the outside, in fact, most wealthy people are empty inside. Smiles on points, photos from vacations, perfect marriages are shown. All this is just a facade for the sake of the image. Behind closed doors, loneliness and boredom often hide there. In your opinion, what are women different from men? Can we say that now you understand women? Men and women go through life with different systems of settings. Women are more subtle in catching emotions, atmosphere, and hidden subtext, while men are more often focused on action and direct problem solving. A man usually strives immediately correct the problem, and the woman may prefer to live the situation, feel it and understand it deeper. Neither approach is better or worse. These are just different ways of reacting. Over time, I realized that understanding women does not mean learning a set of techniques or characteristics. This is the ability to be attentive and not to impose your vision. Then you begin to notice the patterns that cause them to trust, which gives a sense of security, and what attracts. Sincerity is especially important for them, even if fleeting, and they instantly read the falsehood. Sometimes a small detail, like the way you look at it in the time of the conversation, can mean much more than a spectacular gesture. I wouldn't claim to fully understand women, or that I am an expert. No one is capable of this, but I have perfectly studied their intimate side, desires and needs for this sphere. Are there any proofs to everything you've written? Proofs of what exactly? Do you want me to post bank statements, plane tickets, hotel bills, or selfies on a yacht with someone's wife and a postcard thank you in the background? My face and all the details remain secret. That's why I've been in this world for so long. Have women ever spoken or manifested interest in fetishes, strange kinks? About rich men, this is a common stereotype. And what about women? Yes, many people get carried away. Most of them had some kind of fetish. And almost everyone with whom I was secretly attracted to black men. Dirty conversations are almost always a mandatory part. And adult women love the missionary position much more than is customary. Think. Some like to do it on the street or on the balconies of hotels for the sake of adrenaline. Others were more interested. Scenarios with control. For many, fetishes in one way or another come down to playing with power and enjoying what they do. Something behind my husband's back. Even if it's just a special way of talking or a risky place. Many people still love. Breeding king. Usually we are not talking about extremes, but about the intensity and depth of connection in the moment of what they are. Do not receive from their husbands. Have you ever had feelings for these women? And how it affected yours? Personal relationships? Yes, this has happened, but not in the way many imagine. With some, over time, a strong emotional attachment arose, and this complicated the situation because initially, there had to be clear boundaries. In everyday life, this made intimacy more layered. I'm used to a certain level of drive, attention, and lifestyle, which is difficult to reproduce in standard relationships, so I try not to consciously compare these two worlds. All of this has certainly affected my perception of intimacy, trust, and vulnerability. I read almost the entire thread. I also had a similar experience. When I was in my early 30s, I slept with more than 50 women in my 6 years, ranging in age from 18 to about 50. Along. Your story sounds plausible to the description. But the strange thing is that you've been doing this for 20 years and barely made it. Million. How is that possible? It's not that much, and it doesn't add up with the premium rates you're talking about. I wrote, taking into account that the costs do not lie with you, that you have access to unique acquaintances and that you feel good. Pay for your time. I don't want to sound skeptical, but unless you had a gigantic expense, I don't understand how it is. It's a go. This is possible because that figure is inaccurate. In fact, I earned much more. People heard one number and clung to it. But I have been doing this for a long time, and the income came not only from clients. At the same time there were other business areas as well. I omitted a lot of things in the post for the sake of privacy and simply because I don't see the point. Stretch it for 20 paragraphs. I'm sure no one would want to read the whole novel of my life. Hello, author. Thank you for what he shared. Do you have any appearance tips? What works best to get attention? Women, for example, the style of clothing, the choice of perfume, and so on. And you can share which character traits suit them and which are not. Appearance plays a role, but not at all in the way men usually imagine it. The important thing is not how expensive your suit is, and that the clothes fit well, are comfortable, and look like a conscious choice. Neutral, well-sewn things almost always win. They do not attract unnecessary attention to themselves, but create an impression of composure. The same goes for fragrance. A light and fresh smell works better than heavy, pungent spirits. A woman should feel it only when she comes close, and not 5 m away. Confidence works without the need to constantly prove it. Listen more than you talk. But if you speak, let it be. There will be something significant. Don't boast. Don't be too accommodating. And most importantly, don't run after her. Women like a man who moves at their own pace, doesn't need someone else's approval, and makes them feel like they have to deserve his attention as much as he deserves it. This is my opinion. First, how do you imagine a happy life? The answer may or may not be related to your story. Second, have you ever had a chance to cross paths with the children of these women? Third, how did this experience affect your vision of close relationships? Would you be able to date openly or even get married on a woman like your clients if the opportunity arose, or would you prefer to be with the one for whom intimacy is not just a deal, but maybe alternative formats of relationships are closer to you? The fourth thing that is usually discussed: conversations with clients. A happy life for me is freedom. The ability to wake up and choose for yourself what to engage without being tied to a hated schedule. This is more valuable than anything that money can buy. I have never crossed paths as a child. That part of their lives is completely separate from me. All this experience made me more selective in relationships. I could date or even marry a woman like my clients if I was a real connection, but still preferred to be with someone for whom intimacy is not just a deal. At the same time, I am open to different formats of relationships, if there is honesty in them. Our conversations are not always reduced to intimacy. More often it is travel, art, news, business, politics, life stories, and more. If communication is not interesting, then everything else loses its meaning. You mentioned that you created this thread as a form of therapy. What exactly are you? Do you want to get it for yourself? Good question. I think part of it was just that I wanted to speak out without any filters. In my real life, almost no one knows about it, and I have no one to discuss it openly. To write everything down here means to give you the opportunity to rethink what is happening. What wouldn't have happened if I had continued to keep it in my head? And perhaps so. I'm getting a little more clarity about what all of this means for me in the long run. The value system of these people? Do they follow the views of some philosophers or thought leaders? They seem to be alive, according to its own rules, although it is more likely to be just a different set of rigid norms. When I first came to this world, for me, it was a real shock. I grew up in poverty. And see how these people live, spend money, and in what circles. Spinning, it was like being on another planet. It is not a matter of philosophers or ideological guidelines. On the first, there is a picture. The appearance of reputation is money as the highest value. As long as the image and the usual order are preserved, many things turn out to be acceptable. This is not chaos, but it is not the morality by which most people live. There is an unspoken rule there. Laws are determined by power and convenience, not ethics. Marriage can be a deal of relationship strategy, and fidelity is measured by the ability to keep secrets, not by love. If something threatens the public image, it is eliminate quickly and quietly. If it does not threaten, they simply do not pay attention. This is how their world works, and it is held together precisely because it is beneficial for everyone to maintain this system. This is my personal opinion. I'm gonna ask nothing, but you said the women who had it all were still looking for something else. In fact, they have clearly not everything. They are stuck in a marriage of convenience, where the husband is constantly absent and, most likely, himself changes. For them, this may be better than marrying for love and living in poverty all their lives. Therefore, the appeal to people like you are just a way to fill the inner emptiness. It may seem from the outside that they have everything, but inside, everything is mainly based on money, not love. Husbands are busy with their own business, and wives quietly close gaps without sacrificing lifestyle. Hello, author. I'm also a former sugar girl, only a woman. I wonder what legend was invented for you when you were taken to such events? After all, it is not easy to explain where a married woman got from. Suddenly, a 20-year-old companion is taken. Overall, great answers. I'm sure many people on Reddit would be surprised how often rich couples have similar arrangements. Thank you. And yes, I'm sure most people would be very surprised to know how common such agreements are, especially among the very rich. At events, we have always presented it in such a way that it looks natural and acceptable. I was a nephew, a godson, the son of a friend, or even a young employee who is mentored in business. These stories were usually thought out to the smallest detail and adapted to a specific audience, so no one had any questions. In such circles, people rarely ask anything directly, but I have never been introduced to families. It was my strict condition. From the very beginning. The first one, when you just started in 2003, how did you arrange meetings without modern applications? Everything was on the phone or through the club staff, notes were passed. The second is interesting. If the client, I took care of all the expenses, how did it look in practice? She gave cash every time or just arranged everything? At your own expense in a hotel or store? Third, you mentioned the Evergirls Club. I've heard that there are very strict rules for members. Have you ever, to the employee, to comply with any special rules? Fourth, how did you usually formalize this income for taxes? Did he indicate in a specific category or just held cash? Fifth, at the beginning of the DX000, when you are just, did you start, what did you write in the occupation column in the tax return? Did he indicate this as self-employment or something else? When I first started, everything was done the old-fashioned way. Agreements in person or by phone, no SMS, no applications. Sometimes it all came down to what she called a time and a place. Before leaving the club, secrecy was in the first place, so nothing was recorded or passed on through the staff so as not to leave a trace. If the client took care of the expenses, I almost never saw the bills. Flights were booked for me, hotels were already there. They were paid, dinners went to the room account, clothes were bought right in the store. Sometimes they could leave an envelope with cash, but more often than not, my expenses were simply added to an existing account. Everglades Club really had very strict rules. For members and staff. No phones in the halls, no photos, no discussion of the lives of customers for. Outside the club. Everything was built on privacy and traditions. I will not go into details, but I have always made sure that everything is formalized legally. Part was cash, part through other agreements. But everything was solved in such a way that I did not have problems. At the time, I indicated something vague but legal like a consultant or contractor in the declaration and registered it as income from self-employment. I will not disclose further details. What have you learned about female psychology? What are the main conclusions he made when he said, I studied body language, timings, and behavior patterns. And where you can find out more. Find out about it. Many men perceive female psychology as a riddle that needs to be solved. But, in fact, it is more of a wave to tune into. Women are driven not by logic like men, but by the state, energy, and sensations here and now. The moment plays a huge role. Say the right words at the wrong time and they will lose weight. Keep silent at the perfect moment, and it will be filled with more than any phrases. Intimacy is not only physical intimacy, it is the ability to catch micro-emotions even before she notices them. This is the knowledge when to hold your gaze a little longer, when to pause in a conversation, when to change the rhythm. Everything is in her behavior. Carries signals. How does she touch her hair if she is interested? How does her breathing change when she is calm? How it sounds. Voice when she is carried away. There are many books on this topic, but I would single out archetypes and the collective unconscious of both a person and his symbols. Carl Jung, Robert Greene's Art of Seduction, David Base's Evolution of Desire, and Dangerous Men and Brave Woman Jane. KRNS. Thank you for being frank, since you mentioned your race. Do you think you are valued or fetishized precisely because of this? Are you okay with that? Do you feel used or do you accept and use it? Yes, I understand that this is fetishization and I am fine with it. This is part of the attraction in this world. And I'll be honest, it played to my advantage. I don't think I'm being used. Rather, both parties get what they are looking for. And I just accept it and perform my role at the proper level. Thank you very much for watching. In the comments under the video, if you did something similar, write your story. And, by the way, yes, if you ate while watching and did not finish eating food, here you can watch any of these videos. Very cool. They're right on your screen. Click, feed. That's it, I'll see you tomorrow. Come on. Embraced. So long.